tonight, 7 Republicans got together and debated. Donald Trump was not among them. I've got a surprising winner for you from my perspective. And then, of course, more importantly, we're going to talk about who won and who lost based on what I think and what we think is the Republican perspective, because that's who they need to convince tonight. And that they do a good job of taking on Donald Trump, etc. So number one, first conclusion is way too much bickering. They talked over each other so many times, and who does that help? It helps Donald Trump, because it looks like children squabbling at the kids' table while Donald Trump's not even there with his 40, 50-point lead, etc. That lead was mentioned several times by the moderators, especially at the end. And so I don't think that they put a lot of damage on Trump this time around. That's my sense of it. Although there were some significant attacks against Trump, not only by Christie, which we're a little bit more used to these days, but also by Ron DeSantis. My surprising winner, in a sense, I don't think the Republicans think this or anyone else thinks this, was Doug Burgum.
What?
I know, we'll talk about it in a minute, we'll all discuss it. But I thought every time he spoke, he was very conservative, very clear, had practical things to say, and explained exactly what they did in North Dakota, and sounded like more like a grown-up than any of the other ones did. Okay, now by keeping it real, of course the voters aren't going to say Doug Burgum. They barely know Doug Burgum, and he ran a state with about 3 people in it. So in terms of what Republicans thought of the debate, I'm sure that they're not going to love the bickering either, even though they like to fight. Although without Donald Trump, the debate did seem at times very normal and hence very boring. So that's another reason why Donald Trump in a lot of ways won this debate. But among the people that were there, Ron DeSantis, I thought, was surprisingly strong, clear, and in command. Yeah, he smiles in an awkward way. We don't like him. That's not the point. The point is, how did they do within the context of the debate? And so I had already written in my notes that I thought Republicans would come out and say that DeSantis won the debate and that they would have liked his performance. And it was strong throughout. And then at the end, though, he really sealed it off. They asked this awkward question, who would you vote off the island in this debate? And as Christie and some others were thinking about it and beginning to write down an answer, Ron DeSantis stepped in and said, we will not be doing that. It's disrespectful to everybody on the stage. And he took command of the situation. And he put on a pretty decent case for why he did better in Florida electorally than Republicans have done nationally, which is actually should be the heart of his campaign. So overall, they had the usual fighting, and I can get to losers in a minute too, but I thought DeSantis won the debate. What do you guys think?
I think that this was one of the most boring debates I've experienced in a very long time. It was, you're right about the bickering, but more importantly for me, it wasn't just boring because of the bickering and the talking over each other and not being able to understand at certain moments of this debate what anyone was talking about. It was the fact that there was no real response to the specific questions asked of them. They just decided to go back to their regular talking points, no imagination, no real solutions for anything whatsoever. It was just the same talking points regurgitated over and over and over again. They would just ignore the questions asked of them again and again. It was so boring.
That's a Sarah Palin strategy. And I'm gonna get to in a second who they were actually debating throughout the night as well. But Nina, what'd you think?
I mean, they did ignore the questions. Absolutely, they did. I do like how one of the moderators really took control of the situation later in the debate to try to get some command of it. I think each and every one of those candidates did what they needed to do for the people that they were trying to talk to their constituencies. No one made any real mistakes, with the exception of, and I'm not gonna jump into that, I'm gonna say that for a little later, which is Senator Tim Scott, which I'm sure you all are not surprised that I want to go for his throat. Anytime you have anybody saying, but especially a black man from the South, to say that the Great Society was more troubling than people being enslaved, you got a problem on your hand. It was an absolute disgrace, but we'll continue to break all of that down.
Yep, and so the one other entity that was loomed very large in the debate, and it seemed like oftentimes they were running against this entity, was China. I mean, they would not stop bashing China. China is apparently responsible for everything that has gone wrong in America. If you don't know anything else about American politics or foreign policy, you would have thought we're this close to going to World War III against China. So do we have issues with China? Definitely, right? But is it to the degree that I saw up there tonight? The only other country that got anywhere near the hate was Mexico. So apparently, by the way, if you didn't know this, we're going to invade Mexico. According to Ron DeSantis, Nikki Haley, talking about should we use special forces, drones, should we send the military across the border? This is the talk of lunatics.
Insane.
So totally, utterly insane. And so look, the only person who had kind of slightly different ideas because they were just so extreme was Vivek Ramaswamy. And he keeps talking about firing 3/4 of the people who work for the government. That's just, it's absurd. It's childish, it's ridiculous. And he's doing it to try to be Trumpian and get attention by saying outlandish, ridiculous things.
He also advocated for, doing away with the idea that anyone born in America is automatically a citizen. He advocated for deporting the children of undocumented immigrants who are born here on US soil, which I find absolutely disgusting and deplorable. But to be quite frank, it appeared that he got quite a bit of agreement on the debate stage when he espoused those views. But he was the first to espouse them on that debate stage, and it's honestly another example of Ramaswamy trying to posture as Trump 2.0. I don't think that's gonna work out so well for him. In fact, I think that compared to the first Republican primary debate, Ramaswamy really struggled this time, and I think it's because some of the weaker debaters in the first debate seemed to improve in the second time around. That includes Tim Scott. I think that his performance, even though I disagreed with everything he said, his performance at least had improved, and the same goes for Ron DeSantis. The other thing that really stood out to me was Ramaswamy was the punching bag. I mean, Nikki Haley just couldn't get enough, just one jab after another, and that's where a lot of the bickering took place.
Yeah, so my 4 losers, so I don't agree with you on Tim Scott. I think Tim Scott tried to overcompensate for the last debate. Last debate, he disappeared, barely talked. So he tried to interrupt in almost every question, and it was over the top, it was absurd. And so then he got frustrated that they weren't calling on him enough, but you were interrupting every question. And at one point in the debate, he said, do I look invisible to you guys, to the moderators?
Right, look, to be fair to me though, Cenk, he was invisible in the first debate and wasn't as invisible in the second debate. That is an improvement.
Yeah, I suppose it's better to be loud, obnoxious, and interrupting everyone than not have people know you. But look, I think the 4 losers of tonight were Tim Scott, Vivek Ramaswamy. Everybody loves to beat up on him. He had one good moment where he talked about how he's not perfect, but he's trying to bring a business mindset and etc. It was a nice moment. It was a little bit human, which is rare for him because he normally seems like a Ben Shapiro wind-up doll. And I thought Christie didn't do much today, and Mike Pence is just disappearing. He's so boring every time he talks. He never says anything interesting. So I thought those guys clearly lost. So that leaves.
I disagree.
Yeah. Oh, that's interesting.
I disagree on Christie. Now Christie didn't attack Trump as much as he did the first time around, but I think the attacks that he did put out there landed. He used the line Donald ducks in regard to Donald Trump.
And got booed.
Being too afraid. Of course he got booed. I mean, we're talking about the Republican voter base that is still incredibly loyal to Donald Trump. So if we're grading them based on the reaction from the Republicans in the crowd, then sure, I guess he did poorly. But then you would have to have the same standards for the first debate where they also booed him the entire
No, you're right. I'm not basing it on the boos. I just thought he wasn't as strong as the first time around. Nina?
That Donald Duck line was lame as hell.
Yes, I agree.
It was. I mean, he was, the canned stuff. They just cannot resist, and I get it. As somebody that was trained for debates, and your team gives you something to say if the right moment happens. You got to read whether or not the moment actually happens and whether or not it makes sense to say it. And it wasn't as robust. I mean, Vice President Pence is who he is. It is better certainly to watch paint dry, or listening to him is like watching paint dry, even when he tries to inject some excitement. I think the most excitement he was able to bring to it was him talking about he sleeps with a teacher. I mean, that for him was a lot.
Very naughty.
For him to be able to something, yeah, absolutely. Never seen him so naughty. So that was quite something. And as far as Vivek is concerned, somebody sat him down and said, stop being as obnoxious as you were during the first debate. And he's not really good at that. Yes, Jink, I agree. He tried to have a human moment, but he is exactly who he is. And they called him out for it. He started that fight with folks last time, but now all of a sudden this time, while they all jumping on him and ready for him, he's saying, oh no, this is not fair. We need to be civil. Let's talk about policy. No, dude, that ain't what you said in the first debate. You said all of us up here, and I'm paraphrasing him, but basically, are bought and sold. But now all of a sudden you want to be genteel and civil. It ain't gonna work this time. So I was really thrilled. It was delicious to see them go after Ramaswamy.
So last couple of things on the summary. I agree. I actually think that Vivek should have just stuck with bought and sold, and he should have come with receipts. He should have talked about all their campaign donations. That would have been a much better strategy to stick out from the crowd and be more populist, and that's the thing that resonates with all voters. But he went away from that, and I don't think that was necessarily the right strategy. I agree with Nina that Mike Pence normally watching paint dry, but there was that moment where he's like, I've been sleeping with a teacher for 38 years.
That
and you're
was
like, whoa,
surprising.
Whoa, don't talk about mother like that.
Oh wow, you're acknowledging that you engage in intercourse. Wow.
Yeah, and so
hey, you heard it here first.
Yeah. But they're so bad at politics overall. I mean, all their lines, also as Nina said, so canned and rehearsed. When Mike Pence tried to do the Joe Biden shouldn't have gone to the picket line. He should have gone to the unemployment line. You're like, all right, Lego man, just bring it down. Okay, I got it. You rehearsed it and you wanted to say it, but bring it down. All right. So last thing is Nikki Haley. Maybe I underestimated her a little bit. Okay, I eliminated her on day one because she would do those interviews where she had those weird, wide open eyes and didn't want to criticize Trump, and she looked like a deer in the headlights. But in these debates, she's been kind of strong. I think the reason she goes so hard after Vivek is one, because it's easy, and two, because they're both South Asian, and I think he gets under her skin, and it's like, no. The rest of them I have to respect to some degree. That's the vice president, that's the governor, etc. You remind me of my annoying cousin. Okay, and I'm gonna get you, right? And so when she does attack Vivek, though, she does look pretty strong.
Well, look, there might be some of that, but what I noticed is nothing ruffled her feathers more as a war hawk than Vivek Ramaswamy wanting to pull out of Ukraine, stop offering military support to Ukraine, and essentially push for, he says a peace deal, but like what would that really look like? So yeah, I mean, she doesn't like that. She thinks that's a terrible idea. And that was when she got super fiery. That's when the knives came out. And so I don't trust Vivek Ramaswamy's foreign policy. I think what he's outlined in regard to what he would do with the Russian invasion into Ukraine is naive to say the least. And the type of persuasion he thinks that he can have over Vladimir Putin is naive to say the least. However, at the same time, do not get it twisted. Nikki Haley has never seen a war that she has not been supportive of. So the idea of pushing for peace really upsets her and very likely her donors.